for June 22nd, day after the summer solstice, 2025. And we have a show that will focus upon, of course, the new war, still, of course, relatively new between Israel and Iran, now that the United States is fully engaged in it. And we will provide PDA statements, multiple statements on the war. I've agreed, by the way, to share Root's actions, very brief statement from last night, and also 2 sign-on petitions for which we will want everybody on the call to sign on while they are on the call, and immediately at the end of call, share with everybody they know through social media and their networks. And as a most salient point, PDA and I myself as executive director, in the tradition of Progressive Democrats of America, in a context such as this, we will call and commit as an institution to playing a leadership role in a re-strengthened and vibrant peace movement. We need to have a peace movement. It was said about the people of the United States after around the time of the Iraq War that the people of the world, and most particularly the people of the United States, are themselves a superpower, and it's time we revive that superpower. So we will also, and we are very honored to have as our featured guest today, Robert Peters. And Bernie Sanders, by the way, made some very interesting endorsements this week, including someone running against an incumbent Democrat in Metro Detroit. And also very conspicuously, the woman in Wisconsin's 3rd, who previously was, on balance, endorsed by New Democrats and not Progressive Democrats, but is herself an economic progressive. And so Bernie is, and by the way, it should also be noted that we have a very important election day coming up in New York City. We have an endorsed candidate in Zohan Mamdani, both from our 501c4 and from PDA New York. And it's also not untrue to say that that election has international consequences right now. But Zoran's an exceptional candidate, and his primary opponent is a disgrace, Andrew Cuomo. And however, our featured guest today was the very first congressional candidate that Senator Bernie Sanders and his fighting oligarchy movement endorsed, and that is Robert Peters. It is in an open seat as Congresswoman Robin Kelly is stepping down to run for Senate. And we will be joined by Robert Peters, who will be introduced by really one of the great legendary activists of our time, Clem Balanoff in Chicago. Hi, Clem. Great to see you. Sorry, I force modesty upon people. And of course, in a few minutes, we're going to hear, before we get to Clem introducing Robert Peters, we're going to hear from Donna Smith, and we'll hear about our PDA to-dos for this week. And boy, it would be quite a list of PDA to-dos. But I do think certain things have sort of jumped to the top of the list. Look, I want to say, and I'm going to do this every week now, and I'll make it more succinct and more hopefully eloquent each week with each passing week. But we are getting quite large crowds on these calls, and we're getting new people who join every week. And so it's important that I start explaining that what Progressive Democrats of America is, what we do on these town halls every week so that people know what they've arrived at, what's specific to this week, which I did more or less just outline, but I'll recast it in terms of that second point. And third, particular protocols that are very important for this call for everybody to understand. So Progressive Democrats of America was founded in 2004 by a number of great activists from around the country, some very prominent and well-known, but also most particularly by our founding political director, Steve Cobble, and our founding executive director, the great Tim Carpenter, 2 men who met and started working together on the 84 and 88 Jesse Jackson campaigns for president. And they, recognizing the, what's the word I'm looking for? The problems with the Nader candidacy of 2000, and the necessity of strengthening the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, founded Progressive Democrats of America, to transform the Democratic Party, to move it to be a party that represented not the wealthy elites, not corporate power, but the people themselves. So that's Progressive Democrats of America, and we remain true to that tradition through to the present. That's what we are about. And of course, we are also very notable for being the organization, the sole organization to have launched the Run Bernie Run campaign to draft Bernie Sanders to run for president in 2016 in the Democratic Party. So welcome everybody to Progressive Democrats of America. And we are very vibrant, gaining strength across the country, and we look to provide a strong leadership role in the country and inside the Democratic Party at an hour when the Democratic Party is clearly in crisis, with very, very weak public opinion standing, and a sense that and then a strong sense among the party base that progressives need to strengthen their hand in the party to represent the base and to represent the general population of the country. And PDA looks to play a leadership role in that process. Now, what we do every week is we have a town hall. And the town hall, obviously the term of a town hall implies participatory possibilities for the audience, and that is true. But we call on people, but only during certain segments of the town hall. And we have a featured guest, and we sometimes have 2 or 3 featured guests, as we do this week, who speak to very important subjects of the day. Of course, this is a particularly pressing week in terms of breaking news. Not every week is like that, though right now it looks like every week in the foreseeable future may be like that. And it's been somewhat like that since we have Trump 2.0. But nonetheless, we have a featured guest. And that brings me to the third point. Our featured guest this week primarily is Robert Peters, of course, the congressional candidate in Illinois' 2nd District, progressive. And we are very much looking forward to hearing and learning more about Mr. Peters, who currently is a state senator in Illinois, a true progressive. And during that time, and this brings us to the third point, again, I'll get more succinct, probably knock all 3 points down into a minute by next week or the week following. But we do have protocols, and most particularly, and people get frustrated about this, so please know what's going to happen. We even turn off the chat while we have our featured guest on. During the period, not when the questions start to the featured guest, but in the period where there's a primary presentation by the featured guests, so that everybody is focused upon the words of the guest, we turn the chat off. We may even do that today when we read the statements, the 2 different statements from PDA about the Iran war, and also talk about the necessity of signing on to the petitions that we'll share. One is a general group, the other is a particularly PDA-generated sign-on statement about the war. And during those kind of periods where we are focused upon the content, that's the central content of the town hall, we do turn the chat off because the chat becomes very disrupting, and we want people to focus, and we want to have respect for our featured guests. By the way, somebody wrote, I love Miss Barack Obama. Well, that's an interesting point because our featured guest is, I believe, the state senator in the district previously held by one Barack Obama. So we'll be getting to Clem Balanoff introducing Robert Peters in just a few minutes, but first, as we do every week, let's hear first from Mike Fox with our PDA to-dos for the week, and then Donna Smith's thoughts for the week, and a quarter after the hour, we'll interview Clem, who will introduce Robert Peters. Mike Fox, what are our PDAs to do for this crazy week? It's a crazy and sad week.
Yeah, in a big way. All right. First and foremost, gang, as always, and for all the new folks, my apologies for the mask. It's a really long story, doctor's orders. And I apologize if it's off-putting in any way. But bottom line, our to-do number 1 on this call is what? Veterans, revel in the fact that you're surrounded by people who get it here each and every week, 4 o'clock Eastern, 1 o'clock Pacific. We are here building community, showing solidarity with each other, and most importantly, healing together. And part of that healing for many of us is getting to work, candidly. Everybody can identify all the problems out there. There is no question. We all know all about them. But what is core to our ethos here at PDA is this group here, we show support for each other, and we get out and we get to work. So thank you all for being here. You make me healthier just by being here. And from my heart, I thank you for that. And let's move on to work. So to-do number 2, take notes. Okay. And don't rely on the chat because that thing gets crazy long and complex. We like the fact that we can have folks communicating with each other there. But if you're using that as your note taker, it can be a little unwieldy. So literally grab a pen and a piece of paper or a notepad. All right. Because we've got a list of things we got to get done this week. All right. So time and treasure. From a time standpoint, as Alan mentioned on this call, number one, we got to make those actions for no war in Iran blow up. Okay. So nail that, nail that, nail that. It's rare that we start with an online to do on this call because PDA, we're first and foremost about human beings talking to human beings, candidly, on the phone, at the door. However, this is a rapid response moment, gang. So we gotta use all the benefits of social media and all of our lists. Get them out, get them out, get them out. Okay. And our standard is me +3 from a recruiting standpoint. But my brother Dan O'Neill nailed it while we were in the green room. Gotta be 5. Okay. All right. Fair enough, brother. So that's our goal. You not only do the action, but likewise get it posted to your social media and get in your head who are 5 people that I know that would really be into this and make sure they get their hands on it. Okay, cool. All right. Now, as always, every week, I've been known for years at PDA as the phone guy. Our phone bank. It's one of the most valuable resources that we have here at PDA are people who hit those phones, engage with voters. We got a special election going on right now. And like Alan had mentioned, there's also the primary in New York City going on. So we got to have phones on fire, gang. So if you're a phone banker, toss in the chat the fact that you are and put a quick blurb on why you do and the link, pdamerica.org/volunteer. Okay. Help me pull in some new teammates. All right. So phone bank, phone bank, phone bank, phone bank. And we have an absolutely massive to-do list that we discuss on every Thursday's campaign call. And I'll be tossing a link in the chat to that one. But we need to keep this tight. I'll save all of those. We'll toss a link in the chat here at some point. And then lastly, I said time, and then the other T is treasure. Pile on however you can, gang. PDA, we take great pride in the fact that the majority of our work gets done with volunteer labor. And I take great pride in that here. However, if we can't hit our goals and it doesn't look like we're bringing in the kind of victories that we need to bring in, well, then folks have to get paid. So bottom line, let's show solidarity with each other. And if it's only $1, my goal on this call is, if we got 300 people here, 300 contributions, $1, 2, 5, 10. If you can do 100, wonderful, bless you. Bottom line, we know we don't have billionaires on this call. Actually, if we do, it's a pretty special billionaire, candidly. But it's not about great big dollars. At the end of the day, what's this about? Solidarity. Solidarity. Showing respect for the fact that other folks around you are in the game in a tangible way. Show solidarity with those teammates and make something happen, okay? We'll be back at the top of the hour to discuss where we're at on our goals. And back to you, Alan.
Thank you so much. And Donna Smith, your thoughts for, again, a very difficult week in world history.
Thank you very much, Alan. Yeah, I think since last night, really, it's been sort of hard to concentrate on much, but anger and dismay and upset and yeah, I think we all know it. We all know what that feels like. And unfortunately, we've seen the United States launch into bad military situations before. And I always have a very difficult time turning off the human element of bombs dropping and what that must feel like and for families and children. And it's hard to deal with. So when we get to the stuff that we need to do for action, let's make sure we do it. Here in Colorado, we're in a very active political season with people already lining up for primaries and getting ready to run races. So with our chapter here, we're working on that, and Susan's been magnificent on that. We're also doing some follow-up work on our No Kings. We had a virtual No Kings for the disabled and differently abled. across the country. And man, it was a wonderful session. We're going to do something else coming up with that. But I don't want to keep this call long. I am a native of Chicago, so I'm very anxious to hear. My son graduated from the University of Chicago, so I've been in Hyde Park an awful lot, and can't wait to hear what the good senator is going to say, and can't wait to hear Clem. So I'm going to keep it short. Positively Progressive is coming back. Some of you may know I have teeth. I have teeth. I haven't had teeth for 345 days, and I now have teeth. So watch out. My teeth are back, and they're back in a lot more ways than just in my mouth. So back to you, Alan.
Well, Clem, I'm now the honor of introducing Clem Balanoff. Before I do that, of course, I want to remind people that when we have State Senator Robert Peters joining us, we will be turning the chat off. We will turn the chat back on when we go to Q&A, and the run of show will be my introducing Clem Balanoff, who will introduce Senator Peters, at which point, when Senator Peters is done with his opening remarks, I and maybe Donna will ask an initial question while people raise their hands. We reopen the chat and away we go. And of course, Senator Peters, feel free to speak on whatever subject you like, but of course, we are all interested in your thoughts on what's transpiring geopolitically now and with the war. Clem Balanoff is a political legend, really. He is a great union organizer. He's been an elected official. And quite frankly, and maybe this is the thing that's most salient for PDA, this past summer in Chicago, we put on an event at the Teachers Union called Progressive Central, and it was a phenomenal success for PDA. And behind the scenes, let me just tell you, it wouldn't have been a success if Deb, our Illinois state coordinator, didn't have a great relationship with one Clem Balanoff. He is absolutely one of the most effective organizers I know of in the country. Welcome, Clem Balanoff, and thank you for joining us in your capacity here today. Thank you, Clem.
Yeah, well, Alan, thank you, and Mike and Donna, certainly thank you. First, I do want to give a shout out to the co-chairs of PDA in Illinois, Deb Schreisen and Pam Gronemeyer, two good friends and tremendous organizers, both of them. You know, it gives me great honor and privilege to introduce the next guest, who as a kid spent some time in my kitchen. He's a leading voice in Illinois progressive politics, and as a state senator, he passed an increase to the minimum wage, reformed the broken bail system, been a tireless fighter for workers and protections, and investing in affordable housing. And recently, he's been really on the front lines, helping to save public transit in Illinois. He's now running for Congress in an open seat in Illinois' 2nd Congressional District. His early endorsements include, as Alan said earlier, Bernie Sanders. Yes, you heard it right. Bernie has endorsed Robert Peters. I think it was on the 2nd or the 3rd day after he announced that he was running for Congress. My union, the Amalgamated Transit Union, was the first union to endorse him, as have the College Democrats of America, Leaders We Deserve, and a number of others. And we're certainly hoping to add PDA to that list of endorsements. Congress, he really does promise to be one who will help shake things up, something we badly need in Congress, in the Democratic Party, and certainly in this country. In the mold of an AOC, or for those in Illinois, a Chuy Garcia, Jonathan Jackson, Delia Ramirez. It is young progressive voices and organizers like Rob Peters that we need and deserve in Congress. So proudly, I give you the next state state senator and the next congressman from the Illinois 2nd Congressional District, my friend, no, our friend, Rob Peters. Rob.
Thanks, Clem. Thank you, PDA. Quite an introduction. I'll just say, not just talk about the Bernie endorsement, but I remember PDA from my early days as an organizer. I was a delegate in 2016. I worked with People's Action. I was the political director of Reclaim Chicago, and we're in a lot of meetings talking about not only just Bernie's election, but Bernie's race, but also what we were going to do post-election in 2016, and was in rooms with PDA and so many others. And so I'm just honored to be here and grateful to be on the Zoom with everybody. As you know, we are in a constant state of crisis. It's one after the other. I'll talk a little bit about the new crisis that Donald Trump has put us in yesterday in terms of its foreign policy implications. But I think about right now in terms of the district and domestically is the 2nd Congressional District is 40% Medicaid. It's about as much in terms of SNAP usage or food assistance programs. It has been devastated by deindustrialization, and it's a unique district. It stretches from the south side of Chicago through the south suburbs, all the way down to central Illinois and Danville, which is home to a VA hospital, just as our VA is being under attack. And so folks in the second congressional, like so many folks across the country, are in the midst of deep, deep crises. And they've been promised over and over again that they'd be taken out of that pain, just as everybody else has been promised that they would be taken out of that pain. And what we have right now in Donald Trump and his friends in Congress are people who are taking a sledgehammer to the programs and services that people need. And so that is something that pisses me off personally. And as a state senator, I've worked a lot in terms of expand healthcare. So we helped pass the Illinois Healthcare Protection Act, which expanded healthcare access, particularly in holding insurance companies accountable when it comes to treatment, and making sure that people get the proper treatment recommended to them by their doctor. It got rid of the idea of having to go to your insurance company first when you're experiencing a mental health crisis. You get to be in a hospital bed for 3 days to be able to calm down. As Clem has noted, as an organizer, I helped start the coalition to end money bond. And now, as state senator, we're able to get that done, moving us from a system that punished people simply for being poor and instead move the system based off of what does it mean to have safety. And that was a fundamental shift, making Illinois the first state in the country to do so. And that's a huge honor to be able to go from community organizer to being able to be the legislator who helps get that done. And I'm the chair of labor in the Illinois Senate. One of the things we just worked on, obviously, was trying to get this transit bill done. We were able to get it through the Senate, and hopefully we'll get something figured out in the House. But that's a huge package. I was able to bring together labor and transit advocates and environmental groups to come together to say we need to fix our transit. And I care deeply about working class issues. I fundamentally believe we're in a moment where we need people who are going to fight in DC and not just fight to build back from what we've seen taken away from us from Donald Trump, but have a vision for what we want to see in the world. What does this country look like in the future? How is it that we don't just try to save Medicaid, but we give everybody universal health care, particularly through Medicare for all? How do we make sure that we expand and strengthen labor rights? It's not just simply protecting labor in a smaller space, but help folks organize in their workplace and protect their ability to organize in their workplace. How do we say we can't just have things where we attack anti-labor issues state by state? We do this on a national level and have that leadership and that push to do so. How do we make sure that we don't just look at how we're going to deal with grocery store prices, but how we're actually going to make sure that people can access food from an affordable grocery store in their own community because we're investing in that? And so that is, to me, fundamentally what I think this campaign's about, is that it's not enough for us to have people who are going to try to come back to where we were at, the status quo before Donald Trump, but it's about how we're going to take that next step and how we're going to move our country further so that the people who are most in need get what they need. And so I'll add on top of this, I think I'm inspired by the idea of how do we take the civil rights movement and the economic justice rights movement and bring that together, and how do we create a sort of rainbow coalition of the 21st century? And to me, I feel an immense responsibility to be able to bring that together, to say that people who are working class on the south side of Chicago, people who are working class in the south suburbs of Chicago, and people who are working class in the rural communities all the way down in Danville, Illinois, are all going to be under immense struggle if their safety net hospitals close, if their grocery stores close, if they're being pushed in unfair labor conditions, if they're literally struggling to be able to get the kids what they need. At the end of the day, what we need is people who understand that safety for them is you get people good food, you get people good jobs, you get people good health care, you get people good housing, you give people a good life. And that is our responsibility. And so I'm just honored to be on here. I could ramble forever. When I was younger, I was born deaf or hard of hearing, had a speech impediment. And so when you give me the chance to talk, I could just talk forever. And Clem's right. I was pretty young in his kitchen and in his house and asking him about 800 questions, whether it was about Harold Washington or just in terms of, the work that he did in his family. And so I'm a curious person and I'm excited to learn more from folks here. So thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. And now we can't take the cue. I noticed a few people raising their hands. Our sort of strategy here is again not to, and Carly, you'll be top of the stack when we get the calls. So we can now have people raise hands, and we can even reopen the chat. And I'll ask Donna for a thought. One of the things about the Trump presidency is that obviously we have the foreign policy situation now, and we have the crisis that's been going on in Gaza. And in the United States, we've seen something that is geopolitically as significant as anything imaginable, which is the substantive weakening of American democracy and the constitutional republic by authoritarianism. And I certainly believe, and I'm guessing you share this from what you just spoke about, that addressing the economic concerns of Americans will revive their faith, which I think is very strong to want to see a healthy democracy. So just your thoughts on strengthening the democracy, maybe money in politics, how that weakens people's faith in democracy, what can be done on that front. And then we can go to Donna, Clem, and then Carly. I know who No Nuke Solartopia is, and Hartzell Gray, a great young activist from Kansas City. So, yeah, your thoughts on strengthening American democracy in this time of crisis of a nature that we never thought we'd see. And also, maybe if you add to that, I'm a Los Angeles native, and I'm here with my mom in New York, and I flew out of LAX, and on the bus from the parking space to the terminal, there were these two women from Hong Kong. And they told me that what they saw in Los Angeles in the week in Los Angeles reminded them of the Chinese governmental repression of Hong Kong.
Yeah, so that's a lot of different points I'll go to. First, let me just say my wife is from LA, and so what's happening in LA is pretty personal to my family, and it's extremely concerning. And I will just say, way back in 2015, 2016, when Bernie was running, uh, I was very concerned about a rise of authoritarianism, and we can get into debates about whether that's fascist rising or not, but the rise of authoritarianism was there, and I really felt that was coming from the offshoot of the current economic conditions, particularly at that time. And I think that what we have is that is happening now, and it's happening at a much bigger scale. I think people are extremely cynical and distrustful of each other. And I think as an organizer, I feel an immense responsibility to give people a sense of hope and belief in each other. That we need to play a role in providing a vision for people to fundamentally believe in themselves and their community. And that can only happen if you are able to share a vision that people can rally around. And so we have these two competing visions right now. One in Trumpism that is literally about dividing us up against each other without necessarily caring about what it really means to provide people's material conditions. And then we have another vision that you see from Bernie and AOC, which is how do we bring people together, and how do we do that by caring about people's material needs, so like healthcare and food security and good wages and literally having power. And so to me, this is a conversation about who has power and who doesn't. Is it going to be a small select few, or it's going to be the broader community who has power and control over their own well-being? And we can't just assume democracy is not simply just because you vote. Democracy is an engagement in the process in civil society. And so the only way you do that is if you move people to understand that there's a space for them to engage. And so what we have is oftentimes your more established Democrats make democracy about voting, but that's not good enough. It's not good enough just to vote. We want people to feel ownership over their community and ownership over this country. And so it's on us to expand who has ownership over their community, who has ownership over this country. And once they do that, then voting it becomes the second thing that happens because they feel that investment in themselves. So therefore they feel they need to invest in the community. And so I don't get bogged down in the idea like democracy is voting, but democracy is the ownership of of the world around us and the power that we have there and the power we have to shape it and our connection to it and our connection to each other. And so the last bit I'll say is, I watching troops on the ground, and I know we have this debate, so I'm not, I'm trying not to get engaged in the fascism or not fascist debate, but I went to Berlin recently, and I did that for a transit trip, to help do this transit bill, to learn about German transits and to learn about the, how Berlin does transit. But of course, I wanted to do more than that. I'm Black and Jewish, and so I would say the two most popular people in the United States. But and so when I wanted to deeply get connected to the history, particularly in Berlin. And so I remember I visited a memorial because Berlin does an amazing job of remembering their history. I think the United States could follow along in a similar lines. And there's an area that said propaganda of terror, or propaganda and terror. And it was about the statements made during the rise of Nazi Germany and the things that were said. And I was with a few legislators, and I just remember how haunting it was because it sounded so similar to the moment we're in now. And so when we think about authoritarianism, oftentimes we make it seem like it's special or it's this or it's that. They all have a similar playbook. And what we're seeing right now is someone testing that playbook and seeing what plays will work and what won't work. And so it is our job to have to organize and fight back and really try to push back against this and get people to believe and have hope that we can win even when we're in a place of deep struggle.
Thank you so much. And Donna, any thoughts or questions to share with Senator Peters?
Sure, just briefly, and first of all, Clem can't be old enough to remember, but I was in Chicago when Richard J. Daley was the mayor. Clem is not old enough. The Daleys owned everything. Anyway, I've been concerned in watching, of course, as we all have, what's going on in Washington. But what bothers me is it's sometimes it feels almost like hand wringing with Congress, rather than really, stopping what, putting these financial screws to all the cities and states and universities and all. How do you propose when you go to Congress that you're going to help interrupt that and make that stop? It just is not good.
Yeah, so I mean, here's what I'll first say. I don't want to create the expectation that I myself am the savior
Of course.
in that situation. I fundamentally believe that everything I do has to be deeply rooted to organizations on the ground. And so you have to have a good inside the Capitol game and you have to have a good outside the Capitol game. And so I'm going to be deeply connected and see my role as an organizer inside the Capitol in relation to the organizing that's happening outside the Capitol. And then on top of that, I think all organizing comes down to relationship building. The fundamental blocks of organization is building a relationship. And so to me, I'm going to look at my colleagues and I'm going to say, I want to build a relationship with you. And I want to get to know you. I want to know what you care about, what you care about in your district, what you care about in your life, and do those one-on-one conversations with folks. Now, do I believe I can do that with 200 plus people? No, I don't think I could do that initially with 200 plus people. But I think that I can strategically map out who I need to have those conversations with and where I can make the greatest impact. And so I don't think it's in the idea that I can just cause this roadblock myself, but I think I'm in the position to be able to organize alongside people and build the relationships. And the other one is, I think as someone who comes from the progressive movement, I'm always thinking about how do we grow that progressive movement. And so how do we bring people who otherwise did not think that they could be part of our movement? And that's both people who are elected into Congress and people who are living their day-to-day life. How do we bring them in to our movement and how do we move them into that place? And that requires me to know what they care most about. I want to know it, for me, for example, I'll just do myself. My biological mom, she was addicted to heroin and she would give me up for adoption. And she passed away in 1991 from drug addiction. And I was adopted. I was adopted by a civil rights lawyer for a father and a social worker for a mom. My dad got two people off of death row who were wrongly convicted. That was hugely inspirational for me. He argued in front of the Supreme Court as a pro bono lawyer, arguing against illegal searches and seizures, and decided not to give that case to some, bigger law firms. He decided to do it himself, and he worked on that for 20 years to get to that place. And then for me, that drives me. Those things are intertwined, right? the struggle of my biological moms and my mom and the work of my dad is deeply tied to me. And so when someone talks to me about why do I do this work or why do I care, it comes from a very deep place. And my belief is that all of us actually have stories like that. All of us have experiences like that. And I want to know that about you and be able to say, how can we make sure that we can change the conditions so someone like you doesn't have to, someone like you right now doesn't need to go through that right now or in their life. And what you went through, you didn't deserve to go through it either. And so whether they are progressive or moderate or conservative, I believe everyone shares in those stories. And I want to get to know them and be able to talk to them about it and say, we have something in common here. And this is why I'm fighting on X, Y, and Z issue.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Donna. Clem, one quick thought. First of all, amazing to think that young Senator Peters was in your kitchen all those years ago. But it does strike me sometimes, and I've been in Chicago a lot, obviously around the Progressive Central, but I've got close friends. I've done a ton of work in Wisconsin. Every time I'm in Wisconsin, I pop in and out. I work with Dan Swinney at the Manufactured Renaissance Collective and with Rainbow Push. And it strikes me right now that Chicago has a profile as a metropolitan area that is anchored in the interests of the working class that have been, and that anchoring of interests in the working class has been lost in the National Democratic Party. So maybe just a thought, Clem, and any way you want to maybe toss then back to Senator Peters around that kind of thematic. Yeah.
Well, I think that we are, and one of the reasons is, quite honestly, is the amount of union members in Illinois. It's always, that's one of the things that is kind of interesting about Illinois. It has a higher percentage of union members in many industries than across just about anywhere else in the United States. And I think that has something to do with it. Not everything to do with it, because unions also take the wrong position oftentimes. There's no doubt about that. So I think that's part of it. But I did want to just ask Rob one thing, because I think others really want to ask questions, Alan. So I want to make sure we all get an opportunity.
Sure.
But I did want to ask him this, because I'm always organizing and trying to build. Rob, what is the website to contribute and or get involved in your campaign?
Yes, if you can visit robertpetersforcongress.com, click donate. There'll be a pop-up that pops up. I would love for you to contribute whatever you're able to. We have, about 6,000 plus small dollar contributions to this campaign. It's a huge part of our effort. So if you're able to do that, whether you're in Chicago or not, sign up also to volunteer. We would love your help. We want to make sure that we have the strongest grassroots campaign possible. We need to be able to communicate to 700,000 plus people in a very large district, in a very diverse district, particularly regionally diverse. And so, again, if you can visit robertpetersforcongress.com, that'd be great.
Well, we will be pursuing, of course, a PDA endorsement, and I think we know who we're going to likely be endorsing in Illinois too. We haven't started that process yet, but I imagine it could take off. It could even be launched, and I'll ask our staff about launching it. Obviously, a ton going on in the world right now, but we got through the Virginia primaries where both of our endorsed candidates won, yay. And there's the New York mayoral race. But before the New Jersey and Virginia races in November, we'll start announcing congressional endorsements, and we'll be in touch, and everyone can expect who we will be endorsing in Illinois second. And once we do that, we will have you back too, and we will do a fundraiser for our endorsed candidate for Illinois second district. But for now, take a gander at that website that Senator Peters just checked out. And Hartzell Gray, you're up with a question for State Senator Robert Peters.
Hello.
Nope, unmute again. Someone muted you.
How about now? Can you hear me better?
Yep, you're good. Got
Fantastic. Senator Peters, my name's Hartzell Gray. I am Director of Outreach and National Coordinator for Young Progressive Democrats of America. I've watched your race. I am so enthused and excited for your run. And so I guess my question is, I'll keep it short and sweet, is my brother, how do you approach power? Is my question, because as progressives, we understand how much power is everything, and we have been boxed out of those halls of power, which is why we break it down to build it back up. So, what is your approach to power? Are you trying to expand it? Are you trying to protect it? Because it feels to me like too many of our establishment types are when it comes to power, they are afraid to lose it more than it is to expand it and to use it for the power of the people. Like you said, your material platform to make material benefits in the lives of working people. How can you, I guess, your approach to power, but also how can we expand a more progressive approach to power?
Yeah, so I think so the first thing is I come from an old community organizing background. So what I say is that it's important for us not to be afraid of power. It's about who has power and who doesn't. And so I'll use the end of cash bail as a good example. Again, I came from the coalition end cash bail. And my motto is that I don't just work on bills that I think I'm the genius of. I try to work with organizations that have policies that they're pushing and do that in relation with them. So to me, expanding that power is expanding people who are organizing people on the ground, because it's true. Sometimes when you go into these halls of power, you can become almost isolated. And so you need to be able to have people who are deeply rooted to the community and have deep relationships to the community. And you need to think about how you're bringing them into the process. And so my fundamental belief is that it is important that I play a role as an organizer in solidarity with people organizing on the ground, and my job is to organize inside the Capitol. And so that means sharing and expanding power as much as possible. And again, I'll use the end of cash bail. I came from that coalition, and as we were working to pass it, I was up until midnight, having conversations with the coalition and making sure I had sign off from them on whatever deal I was cutting, so I wasn't cutting that deal without them. And that's generally how I do things. I will not cut a deal without making sure I bring it back to the people I'm working with.
Thank you so much.
Oh,
And we're
last
gonna
thing, my bad. I'm sorry. I'm that guy. I'm also very sweaty. I apologize. It's 1,000 degrees in Kansas City. Last thing, the importance of organizers in the electoral space. I'm thinking of all the allies we work with, from Pramila Jayapal, who got her start in the organizing space. I just think that it is a difference between voting for me to do a thing for you versus I want to walk with you because those closest to the problem are closest to the solution. Do you think that that is a mindset that is, number one, is that a mindset for Congress people? And if not, how are you using that to build solidarity on your campaign so that we can make your run not just a moment for progressives, but a movement for the overall progressivism?
Yeah, so I'll just say this. My motto is that there's a saying which is, I'm not going to walk in front of you because I may not lead. I may not walk behind you because I may not follow, but I'll walk side by side with you in solidarity. And so that's how I operate, is the idea that I'm not going to necessarily be the one who's just going to be leading and lead, because who knows where I take you. But I'm also not going to be one who's just going to simply follow, because who knows where you're going to take us. If we do this in solidarity with each other and in coordination with each other. And so everything I'm doing is in the idea of how do we do this together. And so that's sort of my approach and my belief. And so when, for everybody here and for every organization I work with, I think about how do we do that in relationship with each other and not in isolation. And it's not in just service of me. One of the hardest things, and I know there's more questions that we have to get to in a second, but one of the hardest things for me is actually telling people to give money to my campaign, and to knock doors for my campaign, because I feel like it can be somewhat selfish. It's not my norm, but I also know it's a thing I have to do to win in this environment. And I also know that people understand that, even if I'm uncomfortable with it. And I'm okay being uncomfortable with it. And I'm okay also knowing that I've got to do it. But I know that I'm going to have that real conversation with people too.
Bring it home, brother. Bring it home. Pulling for you.
Harvey Wasserman, please unmute.
Hey, everybody, can you hear me?
We can. Take it away, Harvey.
So listen, I got beat up at the corner of Michigan Balboa in 1968 during the convention. So I'm with you all the way. I wanted to run by a couple of ideas real quick. My feeling is that Trump's, and see what you think, my feeling that Trump's attack on Iran is really his response to the No King's Day, that he wanted to change the topic to having 5 million people march worldwide against his making himself a dictator. And so he did what dictators always do, which is go to war. So this has got nothing to do with Israel. It's got everything to do with his power. The reality is that it only took 6 kilograms of plutonium each to blow up the bombs at Trinity and Nagasaki. And it's inconceivable that the Iranians don't already have that much stockpiled. This attack has zero military value. And what it's really about is not destroying Iran's nuclear capability, but destroying Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, because clearly his big bill has been stalled. So what I'd like to ask you, what do you think about a global march for peace and for demanding that Trump and Vance resign a week from today, to follow in the footsteps of the No Kings March? We had 5 million people at the No Kings March. I bet global. I bet we could triple that in a week next Sunday against this insane dictatorial putsch that he's putting on, covered in the war in Iran and covered in allegedly nuclear capability. I mean, the bottom line, last piece, the bottom line is there are 430 nuclear reactors worldwide. It would take a single drone to turn any one of them into a nuclear disaster, and nobody's talking about that. So next week, no nukes, no kings. Again, what do you think?
Well, let me just say, I think I try not to predict Donald Trump because he's about as all over the place as can be, and he's almost it's ego driven all the time. And so I don't want to. I think he's very smart politically in getting himself elected to office. I do not think outside of that he's anything else in terms of coherent. And so I think that's what also makes him difficult, is because he's so incoherent that any given day he's in any given mood, he's developing new crises. And I don't know if it's a four-dimensional chess thing that he's playing. I want to give him that. There's a moment where sometimes I do, but I actually think it's just the whims of a man who treats our country like it's a reality TV plot point, and he's constantly playing that game. What I will say is, in terms of organizing, particularly when it comes to being against this war or just organizing against this administration, I'm all for it. I want to make sure more people are organizing, they're engaged. And I also want to say, like, sometimes it's doing it in the streets, sometimes it's doing it in the church basement, sometimes it's doing it in the coffee shop. We need to get more people engaged, whether that's having them out on the street with a sign or whether that's having that conversation in a coffee shop and just asking them how they're going and how they're doing in their life. So, for example, if someone is struggling because they're going to lose their Medicaid, one of us should be having a conversation with them about how they're feeling, knowing that they might lose their Medicaid. Or someone who is losing SNAP benefits and they're worried about their kids having food on their table, being able to talk to them and say, "Hey, how is this impacting you? And what can we do to get this done?" And I think it's about those one-on-one conversations. I fundamentally believe my adoptive mom, she struggled with alcoholism, she struggled with a lot of mental health issues. And I really believe that when I was younger, I wish someone pulled her to the side and say, "How you doing?" while she was in the midst of a struggle, because sometimes that's one of the most important doorways to the type of organizing that we need to get done. And so I'm all about whatever we have to do to organize, whether that's a big action on the street or whether that's a small conversation in the community. We need more of it, and we need more of it now.
Thank you. And we are closing the stack now. And so people know, we will be turning our attention to PDA's official policy statements on the Iran war in a few minutes. And right now, let's go to Melissa Richardson, then Mike Hirsch, then Carly Fines, Dan Franklin, and finally Olive Freud. And we are closing the stack. Melissa, please unmute.
First of all, I have two questions. Thank you for having me, and we welcome you, Robert Peters. Glad to see that you're running. Anyway, what does it mean to you to uphold the Constitution? Because as we know, Trump cannot declare war, and what would you do to hold him in check? And will you be doing any phone banking for your campaign?
Yeah, so the first thing is I'll say again, my father, the Constitution means a lot. Like I just talked about, my dad argued in front of the Supreme Court about legal searches and seizures. There was a huge constitutional discussion. The role of due process, for example, has been hugely important in my life and the work that I do, whether we're talking about the work that my dad did or work that I've done. And then what I will say is I will make sure to, I said I would support Ro Khanna's War Powers Act resolution, and I myself will make sure I would sign on to something like that myself. So that's where I'm at, and that I'm going to make sure to organize members of organize members in Congress and to make sure to build those relationships. So I think fundamentally I see myself as playing an organizing role in terms of fighting back against especially attacks on the Constitution, whether that's authorizing an illegal war or whether that's attacks on due process and people who are here in the United States. We need our constitution to be stronger. And I'll add on to this. We need Congress to be stronger, and we need our party to be stronger. We need all these things, and so it is myself and all of us organizing to lead people with a vision that says that our Constitution is something that needs to be protected. It needs to be something that works in the 21st century for the diverseness of our country, and we need to have a Congress as equally as strong as we have our Constitution.
Mike Hirsch, very happy to call on you, Mike. And Mike, I'm also going to ask you to stick around because in the second hour, after Hanya Jodat reads the statement from PDA Middle East Alliances, I would like you to read the PDA short form statement on the Iran conflagration and war. But you have the floor right now, Mike, for a question for Senator Peters.
Thank you so much, Alan, and thank you, Senator Peters. Your biography is absolutely inspiring. Your intelligence is off the charts. Your compassion is obvious and evident to everybody here. You're an absolutely tremendous candidate. And I just want to piggyback on what my brother Hartzell said about what kind of members of Congress we need. One of PDA's founders, Tom Hayden, used to say, it's no use to lobby Congress. They never do what you tell them to do. And my answer to that was elect people who already want to do what you want them to do. And that's what I'm looking at right now, not only with Hartzell, but also with you, Senator Peters. Please let me know and everybody here know what the first piece of legislation you would author when you're elected to the House of Representatives.
So I've been always wrestling with this because I feel like my colleagues have introduced so many pieces of bills that I would just like to get done in the first place, let alone that I would want to offer. I was going through a questionnaire about so many different progressive pieces of legislation. I was like, well, I'm not introducing that, and I'm not introducing this thing, and I'm not introducing this thing. And I go, other people have done that, and I just need to play a role in helping move it. But one thing that's been on my mind, and it's come up in the New York mayor's race, but it's funny, we actually do this in Illinois in some form. And in the state of Kansas, they do this, which is publicly funded and publicly run grocery stores. This has been something that's been in my head quite a bit, but it's been something that sits there as thinking about in terms of the food access situation. It's not just only to sign on, but people don't know this. In Kansas, I don't know if you know this, Kansas is not known for its liberal politics, but in rural communities in Kansas, Kansas State University, which is my alma mater. So, when I was talking to the deputy governor of Illinois, he made sure that I was very aware that my alma mater was the the group that ran this program. They run community grocery stores and they're municipally run, and they partner with a nonprofit organization that does service, like a service provider, and they go to food deserts and they provide grocery stores. And then in Illinois, I helped work with the deputy governor and J.B. Pritzker's office to put $20 million in the grocery store initiative to put publicly funded or at least supported grocery stores in food deserts, both in rural communities as well as in working class Black communities. And then obviously this became a hot topic in the New York mayor's race. And I get it, when something happens in New York, it sounds like it's the first time it ever happened anywhere. But it's important to remember its relationship to Kansas, which is I would say the Little Apple had more of an influence on municipal run grocery stores than the Big Apple. But I think that's something to at least keep an eye out for. No guarantee that I make that the first thing I do, because in the next 6 months, I'm sure I could have a future colleague who's going to introduce the bill that does that anyway. But it's a thing that I think about deeply is where can I find some space, and where have we in Illinois seen some of that work happen, and how can we expand that work?
Well,
Senator
Senator, I
Peters,
think that's
Senator
absolutely.
Peters,
Oh,
Senator
go ahead, Hartzell.
Ema.
Thank That's right. Every man a wildcat, I think, is what that's going for. Yes, that's right.
And
Absolutely.
And Senator Peters, I think that's an absolutely wonderful initiative. And I would urge you to get in touch with PDA's good friend, Congressman Jim McGovern on that. I think that you'd find a really strong and powerful ally in that specific remedy to food deserts. And I'll just close with Rock Chalk Jayhawk.
Oh no. Oh no. That's if people don't understand that it's a KU K-State rivalry is what's going on there. So and just
No, I'm
remember,
just kidding. I grew up in Syracuse and we beat them in the NCAA finals. So I'm on your side.
thank you. Thank you. Alan, I think you're muted.
There we go. Carly Fines, please share your question. Thank you.
Hi there. First off, hashtag I love fellow Jews. Now, I wanted to ask. You mentioned living wages, and I want to know that I fully agree with you on that, Senator. But I also wanted to ask you, what about more neurodivergent and disabled voices in Congress, as going off the fact that you grew up hard of hearing, as well as a law that states that people who live life with disabilities in their everyday life, either as a parent, sibling, or caregiver, by law need to be paid an extra $15 per hour compared to the living wages you had, because it inherently costs more to live life with disabilities. So shouldn't that be mundane logic? Pay them more?
Yeah, so I mean, in Illinois, we did increase the wage for folks who are living with a disability. For me, I will just say not only was it hard of hearing, I had a really difficult time with my ADHD. It presented high anxiety. And just I will say how far we've come from in terms of disability justice when I was younger in the 90s to where we are at today. Even though I think with this administration, they might take a sledgehammer to that. I think just in terms of the party, Democratic Party, we've moved in a much stronger position there. So I will say we've done a wage increase, particularly in terms of people with disabilities in terms of the workforce in some sectors in Illinois. And so that's something that I know that I've personally supported. What I would say to me is it's not just the wage increases there. It's the fact that when we think about just in terms of healthcare and the cost of healthcare when you're struggling with a disability, I care deeply about making sure that we actually reduce the cost of healthcare, as well as it's not just in terms of your healthcare provider from your insurance, but also in terms of the location. So, for example, oftentimes when you have a disability, you're more reliant on the safety net system. You're often more reliant on an ER system. You don't have nearly as much outpatient care as you would need. And so to me, fundamentally, we need to make sure that we're funding in terms of the care resources and making that closer to people who are struggling with disabilities. And I will also add in terms of housing costs, right? When we think about disability justice and we think about the cost of housing and homelessness, this is another thing where we see services cut down and at the same time then putting people in more on the brink. And so to me, yes, it's the wages side of things, but it's also in terms of the service and service delivery side of things that are just so important. And so I'll bring it back to the big ugly bill as a good example of this. If there's an attack on Medicaid and they attack using work requirements, that is a direct attack on many working class disabled folks. And so what that also creates is a knock-on effect. So not only do you have an attack in terms of the healthcare, the insurance and who's going to cover it, but then you lose the safety net hospital that's already underfunded. You lose the outpatient clinic that's already underfunded. And then that means you have a double whammy, particularly for someone who has a disability. And so to me, it's thinking about pretty much as broadly and holistically as when it comes to disability justice.
So we are at the top of the hour, but Dan and Olive, they'll get their questions in, so hang on. With the 773 number and Timothy Michelle, you guys will not get a chance to ask a question to Senator Peters. I had closed the stack off. However, I'll remember you when we get back to the conversation after we go through the part about the Iran war. PDA statements will reopen the discussion. It would just be unfair to everybody else in the room if I were to call on people who put their hands up after. Sorry, by the way, Clem Senator Peters, you actually bounced into us on the first week where we're tightening our rules for our town hall. So sorry, we've gone on about this a little bit. Dan Franklin, your question for Senator Peters, and then we'll go to Olive Freud 2, and then Robert Peters can answer both questions. Dan, and then Olive. Please unmute, Dan.
Hi. Thank you, Senator Peters. This sounds great. I still can't, wanted to show you my face too, but that's okay. So I want to hark back to your comments about building relationships with other Democratic members of Congress. And I was just wondering, how do you approach the more centrist Dems and the ones who know that they will face AIPAC, if they do anything significant related to Israel? Also, if you have anything to say about what to do about the DNC, I got an infuriating email from Ken Martin saying, gosh, Trump attacked Iran. He really ought to talk with Congress about that, but said nothing
15
about
seconds.
War Powers resolution. So I was just wondering if you could comment on how you approach relationships with the other Democrats.
Am I to answer for Olive?
Yeah, Olive, please unmute. Olive Freud, please unmute. There we go. Oh, she's muted again. Sorry, I think too many people asking her to unmute. Please unmute again, Olive.
Olive, you should be able to unmute now. Sorry about that.
There we go.
There you go.
Supposing Iran decides to retaliate, how do you think your colleagues, and how do you feel about that? If you get into the House, what should be how should we feel about it? If they retaliate against Israel, if they react any way that they want to do, see in the future. And along with that, do you think that the United States, when they sent in their planes to bomb the atomic place, were they thinking that they might be retaliated against?
Yeah, so let me answer the first question, and I'll get to the second question, but I think they're kind of somewhat similar, maybe. The first question is, so I would just say this: I am in leadership in the Illinois Senate. I've been in the Illinois Senate since 2019. I would have never thought I was in leadership. The reason I've been able to get into leadership is because of my ability to create relationships. And to be honest with you, the way I put this is, I believe I have the skill set to be able to navigate Congress as I've been able to navigate the Illinois Senate. Now, I will say that sometimes saying I'm a good AAA player and I'm trying to be the best MLB player, but I'm willing to put that to the test. And if you would have told me in 2019 that I would be in Senate leadership, I was someone who's been arrested twice for civil disobedience, I would have said there's no way that would ever happen. And yet here I am in that position of leadership. And so I think that's where I have a lot of faith in my ability to build relationships, even with people who sometimes don't agree with me. When I think about Iran and the retaliatory attacks or anything like that, let me first just say this is what upsets me about the Trump administration doing what they did yesterday. They are putting people in harm's way at the same time as, for example, they're cutting the VA hospital. It is reckless. It was unnecessary. It was not thought out. It's embarrassing that the Bush administration put more thought in what they're doing than the Trump administration did. And so to me, those are the questions that are looming. It's that great uncertainty because of the action taken by Trump yesterday. And so, I will say that Iran has so far right now has exhibited some level of restraint, but who knows what happens there? And are we prepared to deal with that? And so that gives me immense anxiety. I cannot make a prediction about how to respond to that. My hope is, and my belief is, if we can get everybody back to the table and they can get back to diplomacy and get back to negotiating, we can stop having people having to be in shelters or bunkers or hiding, and we can have ourselves a chance to sort of rebuild the world that we deserve. And so my hope is that after this, everyone calms down, cooler heads prevail, and we get back to the diplomacy. And it's important to remember diplomacy worked. Obama was able to get a deal done with Iran, and it was Trump that promised that he was going to do something bigger and better or whatever. And my hope is that we can get back to that place. So I think I can't make a prediction on, what may or may not happen. I think it leaves us with an immense amount of anxiety and uncertainty. And my hope is that we have cooler heads and that all parties come together and we're able to have negotiations and diplomacy once again.
Well, Senator Peters, I want to thank you so much. I want to thank Clem Balanoff as well. And I have to say, I love what you said about bringing the logic and energy and approach of organizing to Congress. I have been very clear many times that I feel that Pramila Jayapal, in only 6 years in Congress, and certainly in her first 4 years, actually established a record of being one of the great and most impactful young members of Congress in the history of the body. And that is because of her organizing background. And so I so look forward and anticipate to be organizing with you, because I do a lot of work up on Capitol Hill. My next stop is in DC, got great relationships with a set of offices and office holders. And I look forward to working with you up there. And we will be motivating our endorsement process very soon. So thank you so much, sir, for joining us.
Of course. Thank you guys for having me. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we are a little past the top of the hour. And we're going to, of course, hear from Mike Fox, and then we're going to focus on the terrible events of the past few days and America in a war, effectively, as of yesterday. And we will hear from the National Coordinator of Progressive Democrats of America Middle East Alliance, Hanya Jodat. Then we'll also hear from Michael Hirsch, PDA Communications Director, who drafted PDA's statement, as well as from Mike Fox and Mike Olis, both of whom have sign-on statements about the war. And by the way, I also will read our close allies. Last night, a quick statement jotted off from our close ally and friend Norman Solomon, and we will be joined by the great Senator Nina Turner. So, Mike Fox, let us know how we're doing on our PDA to-dos, and then over to maybe Nina and Hanya, and take it away, Mike Fox. And unmute.
Yeah, my apologies. The machine isn't being kind here. First and foremost, many thanks everybody for sticking in with us here. I'm just going to do some quick thank yous, and then we'll get back to the very important issue before us. The following people have donated today. Thank you so much. Dorothy and Charles, Craig, John, Clem, thank you for your more than kind $100, brother. And Beverly, phone banker Beverly, double dipping. And Nadine and Lori, phone banker Dr. Sonnemoore, double dipping. And Susan and Shelly, phone banker Betsy, double dipping. Phone banker Rick, Daniel, Marie, and phone banker Erica, phone banker Carol, Lisa, phone banker William, phone banker Ken. Listen to them double dippers. And John and Dorothy, thank you as always, sister, for your more than kind $100. And Deborah and Tina and Neil, Debbie, phone banker Mary Ellen, phone banker Michael, and Margaret. And Nurse Judy. Nurse Judy's in the house. And double dipping Dr. Deutsch, who started this off early. And Jane, phone banker Jane, and Mary. We're still a little short on our phone bankers right now, gang, so please do pile on, pile on, pile on. We got big doings going on there. And then, as Alan had mentioned, we've got this online action here for peace in a big way. Stick around with us. We'll be dropping those links. Mike Olis, if you'd be so kind, if you can have those 2 links ready, that would be absolutely wonderful. And back to you, Alan.
Well, what I would like to do actually is, first of all, bring forward so that we can co-introduce Hanya, Senator Nina Turner, if we can make Senator Turner a guest, a co-host as well. And of course, Hanya is with us. And then also Mike Fox and Mike Olis, if we can have the swap petition queued and ready to go first, because we want to get everybody to sign on to both of these. And is Senator Turner with us, Mike or Mike? I can't see.
I'm looking.
Thank you.
And Nina, if I'm not following you and you are here, raise your hand.
She's under the Honorable Nina Turner, and
The Honorable or Honorable?
the Honorable.
The Honorable, okay. I'm scrolling.
While you guys are doing that, why don't I
She-
first introduce and bring
Well,
forward?
there
some-
you go.
Well, Nina's unmuted now.
Great, thank you. Welcome, and can we also make her a co-host so we can also see Nina if Nina's good for that? And Hanya Jodette Barnes, thank you so much for joining us. And please unmute Hanya. And Hanya is somebody I'm absolutely honored to work with, and I learn from every day, and we talk just about every day. Southern California, like myself. And I actually think we all have something to learn from Hanya right now. Hanya is proudly Persian American, Iranian American, and yeah, how you doing, Hanya?
If I were to tell you the truth, my heart is breaking.
Right.
Right. My heart is breaking for my people, 90 plus million Iranian Americans who've endured not just the brutalities of the regime of Iran for the past few decades, but also have lived under extreme sanctions imposed by Donald Trump. But the one thing that I do know from my country, from my people, is that we are very resilient. And in times like these, we rally behind each other, no matter what we believe in, no matter where we stand ideologically, whether we are pro-regime or anti, we will come together and we will survive this. We did for 8 years of the Iran-Iraq war, a war that was that Iran stood lonely in the face of Iraq and its allies in the region attacking us, outside of Iran, and then moving in closer to the end of the 80s, attacking our buildings and just human civilians and our infrastructure. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, Alan, for reaching out to me and continuing to have this dialogue. I also want to honor Norman Solomon of Roots Action, who's been working with me around the clock, 24 hours, really, for us to be able to launch this Diffuse Nuclear War, No War with Iran campaign. And as you all can imagine, when your country is at war, when your people are dying, when there's uncertainty and you don't know whether or not you are going to be hearing from your loved ones, it is sometimes really difficult to organize with a clear headspace. And so I want to thank every single one of you on this call who personally reached out to me just to say hello and how can we help? Your love is appreciated, and it gives me the fuel as an Iranian American going through what we've gone through for the past few weeks, past few decades. It gives me the courage to continue on moving forward. When Alan and I spoke a couple of days ago, it was very, very important for Progressive Democrats of America Middle East Alliances to issue a statement on this. And I will read from it, and if that's okay with you, Alan. And,
Yes, my internet is unstable. So while you read it, I may have to sign off and sign on again. And so please, Hanya, the floor is yours. And I will be back within 30 seconds at the most.
Thank you. Thank you, Alan. Today I rise and I speak with you as a member of the Progressive Democrats of America Middle East Alliances, your ally. Only days ago, Israel launched an unprovoked strike on Iran's soil, nuclear, and military sites. An attack that killed senior Iranian military officials and nuclear scientists and came just as diplomatic negotiations were possible. In response, Iran launched a retaliatory strike, which has already caused civilian casualties on both sides, in Iran and in Israel. And now Donald Trump has taken this crisis to a whole different level, to the next level. He has led the United States into war. Once praised by his Make America Great Again base as a so-called peace president who claimed to stand against the Democratic establishment as the president for peace, Trump has torn that mask off. He has fully and proudly abandoned it. That's why we're speaking out today to condemn in the strongest possible terms President Trump's unauthorized, unprovoked, and illegal military strike on Iran's nuclear sites in Fordow, Isfahan, and in Natanz. These strikes carried out on June 21st without congressional approval and under the influence of a foreign leader, Benjamin Netanyahu, who himself stands accused of war crimes, are more than reckless. These are a violation of the US Constitution and the War Powers Resolution of 1973. Let us stand very clear here. This escalation is not only unlawful, it is immoral. Once again, it is the people of Iran, innocent civilians, families, children, and elders who will suffer the most. And here at home, it is the American people who've carried the burden of endless wars who will again pay the price in grief, in debt, and in fear. This is in strength. It is not leadership. It is catastrophic, calculated abuse of presidential power. These strikes were launched without strategy, without debate, without a vote, and they risk plunging an already fragile region into a devastating conflict with consequences that will reverberate around the world. The Constitution is crystal clear. Only Congress has the power to declare war. Trump's decision to ignore that, to target nuclear infrastructure in a sovereign nation without the consent of American people, Congress, it is not just unconstitutional. It may well be impeachable. We cannot wait. Congress must act now. We call on every member of Congress to immediately convene an emergency session, reaffirm the War Powers Resolution, block any further unauthorized military action, and initiate impeachment proceedings against Donald Trump for his reckless and illegal overreach. Let's be very clear. Americans do not want another war, another endless war. We do not want our resources bled dry. We do not want our economy pushed into a brink of recession. We do not want more death here or abroad. As progressives, as advocates for diplomacy and justice, we're demanding something very different. We demand peace, not war. We demand accountability, not impunity. We demand that human life take priority over politics, ego, and the military-industrial complex. So what I do and what I want to urge you to do is to contact your senators, contact your representatives, and ask them to support Senator Bernie Sanders' No War with Iran resolution, demand that they support Senator Tim Kaine's bill to reassert Congress's war power, and stand behind Representatives Thomas Massie and Ro Khanna's legislation blocking unauthorized use of military force against Iran. This moment, this tragedy that we're in, demands clear action. This crisis demands courage. The path forward must be peace, not war. Thank you.
Well, that was absolutely amazing, and our hearts are with you and your
Thank you.
loved ones.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you for that. I was muted. I'm sorry too. I thank you, Mike, for that. And Mike, of course, you'll have the floor again in a couple minutes. I was muted, and I just wanted to say that's a beautifully crafted statement with love and solidarity and an absolutely trenchant political analysis. I certainly am privileged as the executive director of Progressive Democrats of America to have our organization fully co-sign on that statement along with Progressive Democrats of American Middle East alliances. Of course, I do know you follow the details of this with a very fine-tooth comb, and we can talk about that in a second. I am interested, though, if Senator Turner was able to join us and be unmuted, and if possible, if we can. There we are. Hey, Senator Turner, and well, let's have the floor to Senator Turner, and then of course I'll ask a follow-up question to Hanya about her thoughts on Iranian tactics, and also just to convey this idiocy, in my opinion, from the Israeli government and the Trump administration. The idea that this regime can be toppled easily is nonsense on stilts, and if it were to happen, it would be create an unbelievable catastrophic instability in the Middle East and in Iran. So we'll be back to Hanya in a sec, but Senator Turner, your thoughts, and thank you to your friend who's joining us.
Yeah, this is my little baby, my little grandbaby, one of two. Just thank Hanya and just heartfelt. I'm sure everybody on this call was touched by that. This is not theoretical for her, being her family, friends there, even Dr. Anahita West, there's so many of us who have friends and loved ones who have friends and loved ones. So this is not theoretical, and we should just imagine if the shoe was on the other foot. President Donald J. Trump, not only has he violated the United States Constitution, but this is immoral. Iran is a sovereign nation. No matter if we agree with the regime or not, I'm gonna put that in the parking lot. That would be just like some other country, Alan, saying, you know what? We didn't like President Obama, or we didn't like President Biden, or we don't like President Trump. So guess what, United States, we coming in there and we're gonna do
Yeah.
a regime change. Think about how that's lunacy. I mean, no American would say that that was okay. So what gives America the right, and certainly America being the only nation to drop an atomic bomb on another people's people, we have no moral authority. But what we could say to nations like Iran is that we've been there before, and the way that you're doing this is not right. We had some agreements. Trump got out of that agreement that we had with them. So I do not support any nation. Matter of fact, let all the nations get rid of their nuclear weapons. When people ask me that crazy question, do you want Iran to have nuclear weapons? No. And I don't want any nation to have nuclear weapons, if you want to know what the truth is. So we have to, those of us who believe firmly in justice and not based on personality, not based on who's in office, because I'm old enough to remember that President Biden dropped some stuff on Yemen. I don't know if I'm right about that. He did some things without Congress's authority.
Mm-hmm.
Yemen.
Right. I believe that's true. Yes.
Now the situation might not be exactly the same. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Hirsch. So he did. I believe it was in 2024 without congressional approval. Some of the similar actions. And so people who are all up in arms now, if you wasn't up in arms when President Biden did it, then I got to question your commitment to peace overall. So those strikes under President Biden were wrong. The strikes under President Donald J. Trump is wrong. I'm old enough to remember that a couple of weeks ago, or maybe a month or so ago, the Democrats just ran this Trump, it was Taco, Trump always chickens out. And if you go, you will see video of Senator Schumer. You right, Hirsch. Obama sent drones too. So again, where's the consistency?
All right. Sure. Lydia, sure.
Where's the consistency? So it's all right to step up and say, you know what? I didn't say anything under President Biden. I didn't say anything under President Obama. I'm going to say something now. But what is not all right is to pretend like the similar type of actions did not happen under Democrats. It's called hypocrisy. The Democrats just ran a campaign, Trump always chickens out. They put a taco truck in front of the RNC, giving out tacos and playing games. I wonder if the Democrats who dared this president to do all manner of evil, if they okay right now. Is he chickening out now? So you know what, Alan and sisters and brothers, family, we cannot have it both ways. And we need people who are consistent. We need citizens who are consistent, and we ourselves must be consistent as well. Americans do not want war. We don't have to take a poll on that. If you knock on any American's door and ask them, would you like your son, your daughter, your friend, or your frenemy to go over to war, whether it's justified, air quotes, or not, most Americans are going to say no. There's real flesh and blood. There will be real death. There will be real consequences that Iran may not be able to slap us back as hard, but they can cause some damage, and innocent people are going to be hurt because of this. So all of the war hawks, because war is bipartisan, all of the war hawks cheering this on will never fight in this war. You know who will fight in this war? Working class people from all backgrounds, disproportionately of color. That's who's going to get, be hurt the most in this kind of war. So I couldn't believe it when my sweetie told me that President Trump had did this so much for the 2 weeks. I think he's proud of doing this. I think his ego, for him, this is an ego thing. And him and Hexek and all these other folks who are cheering this on, and we got Democrats cheering it on too. So this is not a partisan issue. This is a people issue. The war machine is in full control, and it is wrong what the United States has done to Iran. It is absolutely immoral. And I'm so glad that PDA and other groups are standing up to this to say we want no wars.
Hartzell and Dorothy, just hold on a bit, and we'll get to you. I was in New York City last night in Williamsburg, and I was at an event and with a friend, and my friend showed me her screen about halfway through the event, and it showed the news. And then I got on a subway from Williamsburg and drove to where my car was parked in the Upper East Side on the subway. And the people on the subway were talking about, yeah, they're going to attack any place that attack us in New York City. Okay. You could feel the people's fear as that was shared. Imagine how the people of Tehran feel. Imagine how the people across Iran feel. And we, as conscious humans on this planet, have to have as much sentiment and love for the people of Tehran as we do for the people around us, and to know that that level of fear has no place on this earth. And so I'm proud to be a part of an organization with a great peace tradition such as PDA, and to work with organizations like Roots Action, and to have a leader like Hanya with us for PDA Middle East Alliances. Hanya
Alan, one quick thing. I want to announce that our brother Ben Cohen, that Ben, Ben and Jerry's, has just launched a new campaign way before any of this. Many of you some people may not know, but Ben Cohen is fiercely anti-war, has been so for a very long time. And so it's called Up in Arms. Up in Arms. You can catch it on social media. He just recently announced it maybe about 2 weeks ago. So if you are still navigating social media spaces, please go and follow Up in Arms. It's really new. It is a group of folks, including myself, but also ex-military people, generals, people from all levels of the military, but veterans for peace types, who are really pushing really hard to be a voice out there and reminding the American people, yes, Ben Cohen is awesome, to be against war. And my God, I'm sure that Ben Cohen never thought that once he launched his organization that this would be happening. And then there's an announcement coming from Global Eye News that the Iranian parliament officially approved closure of the Strait of Hormuz, blocking access to oil routes. So this is going to impact everybody directly or indirectly really, really quickly here. And again, it did not have to happen.
My understanding, I was going to ask Hanya about that. My understanding is the Straits of Hormuz is people approximate is about 20% of the world's energy supply.
That is correct. And I think something to kind of piggyback off of what Senator Turner was just mentioning here is that I kind of want to highlight a little bit of the hypocrisy here when we're talking about nuclear weapons and when we're talking about nuclear energy and things like that. Israel has never admitted it, but it's not an open secret that they do have nuclear weapons. They have somewhere close to 80 to 90 warheads, maybe more, and they refuse inspections. They've never signed the nuclear NPT agreement. They've never been sanctioned. There's never been any threats against them. Look at Iran. Iran did sign the NPT. It allows international inspectors to go in and to their facilities and investigate. Facilities are highly monitored. And even with all of the scrutiny, no one has ever proven that Iran has nuclear weapon, right? And now one thing that is really heartbreaking for me is that we have been made to be the axis of evil because one country wants to have solid control in terms of imperialism and supremacy in that region. So they want to push our country into the brink of poverty without letting us economically improve in that region, right? As the only Muslim Shia country, right? So I just want for us to really be very clear that when we're talking about nuclear weapons, we're talking about a country going against another country that does actually have it, right? But no one ever criticizes Israel for it, now do they? Right? And for the past 2 years, we've seen the genocide of Palestinians. We have seen 40,000 plus children slaughtered, right? Yet Netanyahu, a man who is wanted by the criminal court, has put not only Iranians in danger, has slaughtered an entire generation of children and traumatized an entire state called, Palestine, Gaza. And now, he's taking us into war. And who dies here? Innocent soldiers who have to be drafted. Israelis are dying. Iranians are dying. Bodies are piling up. Mothers are mourning. At what point in history do we say enough is enough?
The other thing too is I live here I'm in Rhinebeck, New York right now, and there's a very famous nuclear facility downriver from us within range of New York City. We just bombed places that have uranium in them, because of, the Iranians say they're developing nuclear energy facilities, and, we know what the US government claims is being developed there. But nonetheless, think about that, folks. and think about the potential disaster and catastrophe there and the human suffering.
And
because-
Alan, just to be very clear,
Mm.
I remember the day where the Trump administration pulled out of the JCPOA. And dating back to 2000, any sort of negotiation and diplomacy between the US and Iran has been completely jeopardized by the Israeli regime under Netanyahu, right? And what are the odds a couple of days before they are set and scheduled to go back to the negotiating tables, this happens? And for people who are naively saying that America has nothing to do with this, Israel started this, those are the bombs that we provide to Israel that are being dropped on my land, right? So no, America knew about this.
Also, I do want to make clear too that for people who have said a few things in the chat, we will obviously publish the statement that Tanya read. Very clearly in her statement, she talks about that this is not an embrace in any way, shape, or form, or in the totality of the Iranian regime. So people keep that in mind. But it is, from PDA for sure, and from PDA Middle East Alliances, a whole-on condemnation, a full-on 100% condemnation of 100% the wrong way to approach the Iranian regime through this kind of direct attack on the country. And I happen to also believe, though this is not my primary concern is for the welfare of human beings and for the planet. I think this is a ridiculous approach to addressing what could be a positive way to resolve the crisis of Iranian governance, which was to be determined by the people of Iran.
Right.
Exactly, Alan. Oh my God. And to me, when people do this whataboutism,
yeah,
even if Hanya never made that statement, that still does not give the United States of America or any other country to go into a sovereign nation and tell them who's going to be their leader.
Right.
And all the United States is doing, the leadership, the right-wing leadership of Israel and other European nations who sign off on this, you are breeding generational resentment.
Oh, yeah.
What you are doing. And it puts all of us in peril, both now and into the future. This is not, diplomacy is always the way to go. First, second, third, fourth, you always pushing for diplomacy till you can't push anymore. And I am of the mind that you can't necessarily exhaust diplomacy. Now, yeah, am I a realist in terms of human nature? And there may come a time where, you gotta go to war. And I'm putting that in air quotes because any elected official or anybody who has influence who is cheering on war,
right,
even in cases where it may be justified, my air quotes again, something's wrong with those people. They need to get checked out. Anybody who think it's okay to send other people's family members to die, and then the people who are on the soil who have to put up with that for the rest of their lives, everybody is impacted. If anybody is cheering that on, even if you can justify it, something is wrong with you, and I want you to seek some help.
And
go ahead, Hanya.
See, something that's really, and thank you for mentioning this, because I'm kind of, starting to feel a little bit concerned that every time an Iranian American has to talk about their land getting bombed or being bombed, we have to first justify that we're anti-regime, right?
You shouldn't have to do that, Hanya, at all.
And that's right. And let's be very clear. Let's be very clear. Decades ago, during the Iran-Iraq War, our young men were drafted as young as 15, 16 to fight this war. Those are the ones who made it back home. Those parents are the ones who support the regime now. What happens when you put military boots on the ground? It turns the country into a nationalistic country where it makes it more challenging and difficult for feminists, for organizers, for progressives to be able to change the infrastructure of Iran's regime within. So you're handing the country back to a military system again, right? So I am encouraging my Iranian Americans, and I don't know how many of us are here, and maybe we should start joining these calls because these calls are extremely important. What I always say to people of my homeland, who live here, who have to constantly justify that they are not, yeah, our country is bombing, but we stay away from, but no. Say it with your chest. You're Iranian American. You bleed for your country. No country has the right to bomb you if you have not made any direct threats to it, if you have not bombed their soil. So that's been heavy on my mind, SNT. And thank you for bringing that up.
I'm with
No,
you.
thank you both. Right
Can I ask a
now-
question real quick? Can I ask a question real quick, Alan? I'm so sorry.
Can we put you on hold for 1 second? Let's
Okay.
just do this while Hartzell's about to ask this question. I just want to make clear right now, the next entry into the chat, let's make it our statement to sign on, which is the swap, and only the swap, for all the other organizations. And I want to get everybody on the call to take a second. Nina's excused because she's holding a loved one. Okay. But if she can type with one hand too. So yeah, that's possible. Anybody, you can just type right now, and you're excused if you're driving, Hartzell. No way you're going to do this.
Oh, I'm at home. Oh, I'm in the parking lot. We're all set.
Okay, good. Then definitely. Let's get the link in right now, Mike and Mike, into the chat right now. The one that is the swap. Okay. Is that one link or two links? That we just got from the swap is on top. So I'm going to do that now. And
Coalition
Alan,
effort is a better phrase than swap.
oh, thank you. Thank you. See, there you go. I get tired by the time I'm about 90 minutes into these things, folks, and my words aren't quite as eloquent as they are 90 minutes ago. So there we go. The one I just put in now, if everyone can sign onto that. So right now we're going to get 325 to 27 people signing onto that. And Hartzell, you have the floor.
Well, this worked out even better that I waited and heard you do that pitch, because what I think is getting lost in this, like, I'm hearing our sister Hanya, I'm hearing Senator Turner, and I'm hearing the passion in Hanya's voice. I'm literally seeing those beautiful babies that Senator Turner's got up. And like, when I hear that passion and when I see those future generations, I don't think about a process argument. Like, it's not just the fact that the president didn't go to Congress to get this military action. It's the fact that we should not be doing any of those actions. So the fact that we have that link that we're posting in the chat, it's not just that they didn't go to Congress. It's that we should not be going to war, period. And it feels like a lot of our neoliberals who supposedly lead the party, Hakeem Jeffries, Senator Schumer, they are relying on this whole idea that, well, they shouldn't have bombs, but also we shouldn't have went to Congress first. Well, no, there should be no war. We should be a peace party. And I think that we need to make sure when we're sending these links and we're sending our emails and we're calling our representatives, it's not just the fact that the president didn't go to Congress. It's that we should not be going to war, period. And I hope that we don't lose that, because you're going to hear a bunch of people, we've already heard it, who are even trying to give Trump credit for this while also saying, well, he should have done this instead. No, we should not be going to war. That is what we should be telling people. So I hate to piggyback, but I just feel like it's really important. Like, as we hear these testimonials and you hear passion, that is not a process argument you're hearing. You're hearing our brothers and our sisters saying, I do not want to be complicit in killing babies or killing anyone. And I just don't want that to be lost. And especially the fact that we're going to pay for it. No, unacceptable. No war, period. That's what we need to make sure we get across.
Love it. Your thoughts, Hanya and Senator Turner.
Amen. Even Tupac, a lot of his quotes, this very famous quote by him, got money for war, but can't feed the poor.
Can't feed the poor, yeah.
Yeah, it's all over. People are really using that, and that is the truth. Cutting Medicaid, cutting Medicare, cutting off SNAP, cutting off, that. But you always find enough money for war. It is really, really hurtful. And then somebody put into the chat, I hope I captured it. I loved it so much. I think it was John Davis. And John said, nobody should ever have to defend their government to declare their love for their country. And that part right there.
Anya.
Yeah, I mean, as much as sometimes I feel like we, the sadness in our heart, in our minds right now, especially, I can speak to my community and for my community when I say these are some challenging times, right? I am also very motivated by the love that I see from the progressives and the people of America, the goodness of America, which is the people, right? And you know, this encourages me to wake up every single day and want to fight more, right? And challenge the US imperialism more. So I have to say, for a lot of us who feel like, what do we do in this moment? Is what we're doing impactful? I say 100% continue on doing what you're doing. Always remember that the people that we put in office, whether they're senators, whether they're council members, Congress members, the president of the United States is elected by you to work for you. It's not the other way around. We have to begin demanding for there to be some law and order in this country. And I think what we need to do right now is just stay and remain laser focused on making sure that the Congress is holding an emergency meeting to vote on this war powers resolution, making sure that we're fully supporting Senator Sanders' no war with Iran. And, you know, just joining rallies and organizing, because it is with us, change begins with us. It's not top down, it's usually down up, right? And I just again want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for holding my community in prayers. And you're just looking forward to working with each and every single one of you.
Yeah, and Rep Connor, his incredible courage, and Rep Massey, President Trump just put on Truth Social that he starting the pack to primary Rep Thomas Massey. I mean, who would have thought that I would be saying, right on, Rep Massey,
Yep.
you on something of this magnitude? It don't matter if you disagree with the person 99.9% of the time on this issue right here. Rep Massey, for whatever reason, he is absolutely correct. Not only do they have to go to Congress, but we shouldn't be fighting in this war. So just letting the family know that President Trump is already declaring that he's going to primary him. But President Trump does and says things out loud that neoliberal Democrats just do behind closed doors.
For sure. I want to so interject here one very important point. I'd love for Hanya to stay on while Mike Hirsch reads a statement that he composed. The short form of that, Mike, maybe whatever it was, the first few paragraphs. And we will sign on to the Middle East Alliance's statement, and PDA will also send out this. We have another signature form we'll share with everybody shortly, but I also want to let folks know that PDA, along with our partners at Roots Action, are committed to calling for a peace movement and for a mass peace movement right now. And I will put out a statement about that within 24 hours, because obviously we have the statement from Mike, the statement from Hanya, and we need to have a peace movement. And I will try to reach the person I know best, who is in the close inner circle of the hands-off / no kings organizing committees, and to propose this to them. And hopefully they will get on board too, because we need to, as somebody said earlier, I believe it was Harvey Wasserman, we need to see those size crowds out in the streets as well on this issue too. Let's hope that comes to pass too, and we can partner with all these great organizations and build a massive peace movement. Mike Hirsch, can you, are you prepared to be able to read that statement right now?
Sure. I just want to say real quick before I did, PDA launched in 2004 because we doubted the mainstream Democrats' opposition to the illegal wars that were going on at that time. And subsequently, we've never shied away from criticizing war. We mobilized alongside Harriet Fulbright and other peace leaders to kill Senator Joseph Lieberman's resolution. He's trying to impose an illegal blockade of Iran, which is an act of war. When we started, a majority of senators signaled that they would support it. By the time we were done, he had to withdraw it because we exposed it as the act of war that it was, the cowardly act of war, and all too typical of Joseph Lieberman, all too willing to send other people to fight and die for his schemes. And just utterly heartbreaking. I can share the link to the post, but I'll just say very quickly the introduction of what we're talking about. Progressive Democrats of America is outraged by Trump's reckless fascist actions. We condemn Trump's unconstitutional bombing of Iran. We support the Khan Amassi War Powers Resolution. We demand that Trump and Vance resign. PDA is organizing with our allies inside and outside of Congress to push back against Trump's illegal aggression. We know that all across the political spectrum, most Americans oppose squandering our resources to kill innocents in other nations. And I'll share the link to the rest of it.
Thank you so much, Michael. And if we can now also then put the link to the second sign-on into the chat in just the second sign-on. And again, I think hopefully everybody is signed on to the first one. And if we can get the second link in now, we can have done our due diligence. And we want everyone to sign on to a unique statement through our new database system. That will have everybody signing on to a petition. And we want people not just to sign on to both petitions, but to share the specific links that are going to be in the chat right now. So Mike Olis, again, if you can add that, just the second link into the chat for the sign-on sheet. And Hanya, any thoughts to add on, or Senator Turner, before we go to Timothy Michelle, who's been patient, and Dorothy Reich?
I mean, Alan, just being here and feeling this movement and what's happening and what's taking place with 310 people on this call just is the energy that I need to continue on pushing forward. And I can tell you that if I were to relay the message that today at 2:46 p.m., 300 people, progressives from across the country, have gathered together to say no more wars and you know, especially when it comes to Iran. And let's not forget also that while all of our attention is now towards Iran, there's children still starving in Gaza, and they're getting killed, you know, in large numbers as they go search for food, right, for their families. These are children as young as 7, 8 years old. So let's not forget about them. Let's keep everyone in our hearts. And I want to say one thing. We're feeling very angry. I find myself very angry sometimes with the state of the world and how hypocritical we can be, right? But I also want to say that let's not also forget that there are also Israelis who are suffering in Israel right now with some of these retaliatory attacks on Haifa, Tel Aviv. And let's lead with compassion. Let's lead with love. And let's just continue on reaching out to each other and hold each other very close in prayers until there are no more wars. And I'll just hand it off to SNT.
No, thank you for that so much, Hanya. And I echo everything that you just said. Just love PDA and the Courage, Roots Action, and so many other organizations who may not be with us today for standing up. Cold Pink, you know, just the whole crew that's been out there sounding the alarm for a long time. You know, I put something out on social media trying to appeal to, this should be something that all people care about. Forget your political affiliation. This is really about humanity. But dear MAGA, we don't have to have regime change war. We don't have to have a country where bigotry or anger drives our politics. That's dear MAGA, that's dear neoliberals. We can come together and fight for each other and create an America that guarantees us healthcare, housing, education, clean air, clean food, clean water. A better world is possible, but we absolutely cannot war our way to peace. There is no such thing. So we must be committed to hold any administration accountable for their actions one way or the other. And I am too honored to be in the midst of people, for the most part, who hold to our value proposition, our purpose proposition, and not to a political affiliation proposition. We are all charged with being humanitarians because, but by the grace of God, there go any of us.
Absolutely. I have turned my camera off because my connectivity is a little bit shaky. Timothy Michelle, you've been so patient. Thank you, and please unmute.
Thank you. Yeah, I understand there's a lot of people on this call. I just wanted to talk a little bit about Mohammad Mossadegh back in 1953. The United States overthrew the legitimately elected president of Iran back in 1953. So we already did regime change once in Iran. And what Mossadegh wanted for Iran was a secular democratic republic. And unfortunately, we sent in somebody named Kermit Roosevelt and the CIA in conjunction with MI6, and they managed to support opposition to and finance opposition to Mossadegh and put in the Shah, who was a very brutal dictator, and which led to the rise of Ayatollah Khomeini. And I just wondered if people were remembering that. And now that we go in and we do a sneak attack in the middle of the night, while Iran was waiting for negotiations to conclude and the signature of a new JPOA agreement, and then Trump says we are going to wait 2 weeks before I'm going to make a decision on whether the United States gets involved in in Israel's war with Iran. And then lo and behold, a day after he says that, we have an attack. We wake up in the morning and we see the news. How are you going to deal with it? How are representatives, how are senators, representatives going to be able to take back the control of the Congress to approve wars? That rule was put in for a very, very good reason. It always goes all the way back to Polybius, 160 BC, who Madison was aware of, who Montesquieu had read significantly, and much of the Constitution was based on the teachings of Montesquieu. And the fact is that he recognized back then that he said we have to take human behavior into consideration, and that if anybody given absolute power, it becomes something that has a deeply disturbing effect on the mind. And when somebody can get away with anything and there's no consequences, that it just distorts human behavior, and empathy goes out the window. How do we reestablish that? Because obviously it has been disestablished, and we need to get that back. And how can candidates address that? And I think, I think I'll stop there and just let somebody give me some answers to that.
Well, I'm gonna toss to Senator Turner and to Anya, and then I'll opine just a moment on it. But Senator Turner, democracy in tatters in America, how do we rebuild it?
Well, my goodness, with calls like this, I mean, this is it. This is how we rebuild it. There's no, I wish, Lord knows, I wish we had some magic wands or something like that, and we can make it happen right this moment. But it is the coalescing and the coming together, like people like us and so many others, again, who are not represented on this call in this moment, who have a consciousness raising, because that's really what this is about. You know, I would teach my students to deconstruct their construction. We're all constructed a certain way, socialize a certain way, and until you have an enlightenment about various issues that impact humanity in the way that we are doing right now, this is how we repair, restore, and create anew. It's one person at a time, it's one step at a time, one movement at a time, and it is ordinary people putting a little extra on their ordinary. All the great movements that we refer to from a historic vantage point happen that way. One person at a time, joining with another person and another person, another person. They had a consciousness raising about a certain critical issue, and they came together and had a dogged determination to change things and to turn things around. Some people got hurt physically, some people got hurt mentally, spiritually, some all three, but that change came because people would not relent. So yes, I know it may sound trite or too simplistic, but what we are doing right now, all the please sign and share, share what PDA is putting out there in terms of signing on. It is moments like this that we're going to look back on that are going to turn the tide eventually for the change that we're seeking.
I love it when you're on this call and I can call on you before I have to opine on, because that eloquence is just unbelievable. Go ahead, Anya.
Imagine having to go. Imagine having to answer a question after a Santee speaks. Like what?
Yeah.
I think this is it. This is already happening, right? But we just need to make sure that we're highlighting it even more, right? What needs to happen now? And again, I think we're seeing now this major anti-war grassroots movement since the genocide in Gaza began. I think what we need to make sure right now in this moment is to have enough knowledge about that region and do our due diligence and study that region and how we got to this point to be able to rebuttal the propaganda that is coming out, constantly coming out from the propaganda machine, which is, you know, the legacy media, right? What we're seeing right now, the difference between really the headlines, you know, during the war of, you know, before we invaded Iraq and now is there's really nothing that different, right? But I just take a lot of power and a lot of you know, confidence in seeing, you know, how folks on Twitter are starting to retweet and state the facts and call out you know, journalists even who are writing propaganda news 24/7, right? Because they are beholden to someone else, right? Exposing AIPAC, continue on doing that. Make sure you do that through writing articles, op-eds. And an example of this tight grip that AIPAC has on candidates is Representative Massey, who's a Republican, doesn't take a dime from AIPAC, right? And he's been able to introduce and reintroduce the War Powers Resolution, a bipartisan bill that is now, you know, in collaboration with a Democrat in Congress. And, you know, the one thing I will say is continue on. Dedicate yourself to calling members of Congress, your senators, your elected officials who work for you to make sure that they put a stop to this madness, right? Call for impeachment of Trump. Make sure you do that because what he has done is not lawful. And the last thing I would say is that we have to get new progressive bodies in Congress and in Senate. So when you hear someone running as a progressive in any area in the nation, make sure you dedicate 100% of your time by calling, phone banking, giving every dime that you have. And I know that our money, you know, has to stretch very far, you know, especially because progressives, we don't take lobby, we don't take corporate money, we don't take AIPAC money. But make sure that you are vetting and suggesting for younger folks generation, the up and coming generation to run for office. These are things that are happening, but we can do more. We can always do more. And just providing support, emotional support to each other. I think that's, you know, that's all I have to say.
You know, ever since my quick thoughts on it is just how important the first half of this town hall is with the second half, because Senator Peters came on and very much in the sort of inflection points of like a Sanders 26 campaign and the thoughts of many people coming off of this last election cycle, the necessity of the Democratic Party to speak to pocketbook issues, to kitchen table issues, to be really responsive to the economic needs of the working class. And yet we do have to remember, as recently as 2006, we had a president who had record-breakingly low approval ratings with a supposedly booming economy. This is before the market crash, when everybody was getting these houses through these ninja loans and household wealth was supposedly higher than just about ever in America, that he was underwater because of his foreign policy actions. So now we have new coalitions that can be built. And if we combine both of them, I think we can again know that on both fronts, with the foreign policy concerns, the country does not want a war. That's unequivocally clear. Okay? The population does not want a war. That includes loads of people who voted for Trump. And they also want no wealth inequality, the wealth inequality trajectory to be ended, to have more distributed wealth and possibility, and a vibrant working class once again. I think that we really have to build off of this, but we also have to build off of it because there's nothing that presses urgency like this kind of foreign policy conflagration, death, destruction, and warfare.
And Alan, real quick, I have a few other things that we can do.
Well,
one
can
is
I go to Dorothy and then quickly, Mike, if you can collect your thoughts, do it in 2 minutes and then go to Dorothy?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. Always happy to stand by for Dorothy.
Okay. Dorothy, then Mike, and then let's try to be quick, and then maybe to Mike Fox let's try to finish the stack quickly, folks. Dorothy, go ahead.
Hi. So just to follow up on Timothy, Musadek wanted to nationalize the oil well. So that's what we had to get rid of him, obviously. But I just want to say that what we're dealing with is a group of people who, for empathy is a fault. And they keep trying to distract us. First they do their big, beautiful bill that's going to kill people. So people get upset. So they're going to distract us from that with immigration and trying to turn Los Angeles into a war zone, pulling families apart, causing untold misery here in Los Angeles, and trying to destroy Los Angeles because it's killing our economy here right now. So people got upset about that. They didn't like that. So now, well, okay, they don't like that. Let's have a war. And then they go to a war, and the people are being killed. They don't care. Empathy is something to be looked down on and to be avoided. So, empathy is a bad thing. Who ever thought that anybody would think that empathy is a bad thing? But the Republicans, they think that. And the Democrats don't know how to respond to that. We can't call for Trump and Vance to go, because then we get Mike Johnson. There's no good options here. If we get rid of Trump, we get Vance. Maybe he'll have learned his lesson if we get rid of Trump and go back to how he used to be before he became a crazy Catholic. Right now, MSNBC is in Westwood looking and saying that the Iranians are Westwood Boulevard is where there's a lot of Iranians. What do they call it? Anyway, he's there, and he's saying that the Iranians are split on the bombing. Some of them like it. Well, I don't believe that. Not for a minute. And the next big demonstration, I appreciate what Harvey is saying, but it takes a massive amount of work and organization to get 5 million people out in the street. And the next one is going to be July 17th. It's in honor of John Lewis, and hopefully they'll add this Iranian war to the mix. But people need to make arrangements, because for some reason they're doing it on a Thursday, and we have to make it bigger than the last one, or we're going to look stupid. So if you have a job, please arrange to get off work that day, because July 17th is the day, and it has to be massive. We need 3.5% of the population out. We got 1.5% last time. We're almost there. We're halfway there.
Thank you so much. And I think I think the way that they've organized that at No Kings is they have major days of activism and then a few minor, not quite yet at the level of the hands off and No Kings. So they're trying to put spotted days in. And I think the John Lewis Day of Mobilization is a more sort of minor as opposed to a major organized event, which is why it's at midweek. They actually passed on our idea to focus on Medicaid cuts with a big march. We presented that to them along with the nurses. They did accept the proposal, and there'll be a minor day of action in the week before, up until the 60th anniversary of the Medicare for All. Mike Hirsch, the floor is yours.
Well, I want to thank Dorothy for presenting so much information. Dorothy is her own little news service, and I appreciate everything Dorothy says. People are asking, what can we do? What can we do? Marches are extremely important. Everything that you can do is important. Please do whatever you can, contact Congress, use the forms that we're dropping in. But here's something else that we really need to start thinking about, and that's to disengage from this economy, to be radically uninvolved with the U.S. economy, the exploitation, and how it feeds the war machine. If you don't need to spend money on something, if it's not a food or a necessity, don't get it. We're under a lot of emotional pressure here, all of us. And the urge to get a luxury good or to splurge on something to make ourselves happy, it's just going to deplete our bank account. And what that would do, I think, is send a clear message to corporate America that does pull Trump strings, that we aren't having it, that we are not going to participate in another war of choice, another series of war crimes, and another onslaught against another nation of innocent people. And we're going to demand control of our country back. And the way we do that is through the pocketbook. Think of it as a Montgomery bus boycott in all 50 states and around the world. Do not feed the beast. And I think if we starve U.S. capitalism, we will bring them to their knees, or at least make them listen to us. So that's something that all of us can do quite easily. And as a side benefit is we can invest some of the money that we save by not buying things that we don't need, especially from Amazon and Walmart and these other big box mom and pop destructive influences.
No Target, says Senator Nita Turner. No Target.
That's right. We are going to target Target for not giving them a cent of our money. Anybody who wants to back off from inclusion and diversity and fairness, they don't deserve our money, not a cent of it. So shop locally, shop from people you know if possible, and only shop when necessary. We've got to hit them where it hurts. And that's something that we can all do. And as a benefit of that, when we save some money, we can have more money to invest in Progressive Democrats of America and the efforts that we're doing. So that's a little bit of a plug. But certainly, and we can't afford to pay down our bank accounts or run up our credit card bills, because a recession is coming, whatever we do. Trump is screwing things up so royally. Tough times are coming no matter what. So prepare and do so with a purpose. And that's it.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, final thoughts from Senator Turner and then Hanya, and then we will go to family time and Senator Turner.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say much more than I've said. I want people to keep the faith. I want people to know that those of us who are pro-peace, anti-war are on the right track, despite how loud the other voices are and how much money that they have. You cannot be the type of person who thinks it's ever okay to go to war and do it so cavalierly. Only people who are absolutely out of their minds will think that, and you got to hold that near and dear. We can do a lot of great things together. There's going to be some collateral damage. There's no doubt about it. But I do ultimately believe that people like us and the spirit like ours all over the world, it's not just us here in America. We're not alone. There are other people just like us in other countries, in other places, in other spaces, who feel the same way that we do, who are ready to be actively engaged in a omni-partisan way. I hate to even use the word partisan at all, but omni, because this is not a partisan issue. Both Republicans and Democrats have engaged in war making. Both Republican presidents and Democratic presidents have bombed and done things without the pure consent of Congress. And I want us to keep in mind that we should not absolve anybody for the technicality, as Brother Herzl said, the technicality of the Congress signing off. That's a technicality. Now, it's an important technicality, but that shouldn't let anybody off who's cheering us going into war, killing our people and killing other people's people. It is not the right thing to do. So we are on the right side of justice, and we got to keep pushing. And Alan, I am just honored to be in community, as I always say, with the members of PDA. So many others, and so is my grandbaby.
I love that. That's beautiful. Thank you for joining us so much, and thank you
My
for your
pleasure.
guidance. Thank you.
A future YPDA member is grandbaby Senator Turner. Thank you very much.
I got two for you.
I love it.
Yeah, Alan, I'll just wrap this up with a quote from James Baldwin that says, "Love has never been a popular movement, and no one has ever wanted to be free. The world is held together, really, it is held together by the love and the passion of very few people. Otherwise, of course, you can despair. Walk down the street of any city, any afternoon, and look around you. What you've got to remember is what you're looking at is also you. Everyone you're looking at is also you. You could be that person, you could be that monster, you could be that cop, and you have to decide in yourself not to be." And with that said, I want to thank every single one of you here for choosing to hold this world together with so much love, even though times get so hard sometimes for us. And quite often we find ourselves in the losing side of things, but we keep going. So that's all I have to say.
Well, thank you so much, Hanya, and thank you for proving so clearly for the entire audience why, when I introduced you, I said I learned so much from you, pulling out the Baldwin quote. And as you know, from our conversations on Zoom, sometimes, I don't know why it is, but your camera, the depth of field is such that we can't read the books. But as you know, I've been like, wait, that book right there. And then she tells me all about it and I get the book. So I really do, literally, every time I deal with Hanya, learn things from her. So thank you so much. That was beautiful, beautiful quote. And love, absolute love and solidarity. And thank you so much for your leadership. Thank you. And we will complete the stack in family time. And I know I want to hear from John and Donald and Nina, who haven't spoken, Melissa and Harvey. In fact, John, I saw what you put in the chat just a moment ago about the NYC race, and that is so. I am in Metro New York TV market right now, folks. It is insane what APAC money can buy over the airwaves. John just put a quote about that. But I want to put a ribbon and a bow on this town hall, and then if Mike Fox is okay with it, I'll stick around during family time and complete the stack. And I want to thank, of course, Senator Nina Turner, Hanya, Jodette Barnes, and Mike Hirsch for their contributions today. I especially also want to thank Mike Olis and Mike Fox, who pulled together those sign-on forms I hope everybody signed on to. Hartzell Gray for his wisdom across the entire town hall. And of course, I want to thank Clem Balanoff, and I especially want to thank Illinois State Senator Robert Peters and the next congressman from Illinois' 2nd District. By the way, folks, we really need to get behind this campaign there. When we do, I know we haven't endorsed yet. It will be determined by the PDA members in Illinois 2nd. I'm confident it will produce an endorsement for Senator Peters. And this is the type of race where an organization like PDA leaning in now can just confirm top front runner status and really get this great progressive into Congress. So I think we really need to think along those pragmatic lines on that race. We have many, many more exciting announcements coming up on the electoral front soon. And yes, again, want to thank all of our guests, and let's build a peace movement, folks. And I think we have the majority of the public with us. I think Donald Trump, in his infinite cynicism, as Senator Peters says, everything is a ploy and a play, like a reality TV show for Trump. This idea that you go to war and presidential ratings go sky high, let's disprove that theory right now with all that we have. And of course, our thoughts and prayers go out to the people of the Middle East, or the people of Gaza, the people of Iran, anybody impacted by the bombs and weapons. I love that Hanya included the victims of people in Israel as well. But especially right now, our thoughts go to, since it's new, the people of Iran and the victims of United States militarism. So thank you, everybody. And that's our town hall. Everybody stick around for family time. And I should say before the